Hello, everyone.
You guys, Child Protective Services in Tennessee is in a lot of trouble. What Child Protective Services doesn't want you to know. Stick around because this one is a good one. What if I was to tell you we actually have direct evidence of CPS and the state of Tennessee committing treason? Yes, treason. If you live in Tennessee and you have a CPS case, or you did have a CPS case, you're going to want to stick around. You might be asking yourself at this point, how do you possibly have evidence of the state of Tennessee and CPS committing treason? Well, that's a good question because it all involves the Tennessee Department of Children's Services Handbook. And I'm going to show you how. You see, this is the Tennessee Department of Children's Services Policies and Procedures. It was actually published December of 2016. Now that's very important, and we're going to come back to that point here in a second. You see, this is a book that is teaching you everything about the Constitution of the United States of America. All of Child Protective Services policies and procedures must fall in line with the Constitution, as well as the Tennessee Constitution. Okay, in the Client's Rights Handbook, we're going to scroll down to page 6. Once you get down to page 6, we're going to look at paragraph 2. At the onset of the investigation, the investigator will hold an initial interview with your child to determine their immediate safety. This interview will take place away from the alleged abuser, either at home, school, or in another safe location. Your consent is not required for an interview to take place. Let me read that again. Your consent is not required for an interview to take place. That is absolutely not correct. That paragraph right there is teaching your caseworkers that they can absolutely have the right and power to circumvent the Constitution and violate your 4th and 14th Amendment rights. Not only yours, but your children's as well. They not only mentioned it on page 6, but they mentioned it on page 7 as well, and it's right there. Your consent is not required for an interview to take place. The CPS agencies in the state of Tennessee are directly involved in teaching their agents to circumvent the Constitution. And why do I say the state of Tennessee? Because the state of Tennessee published this in December of 2016. They published it. They published their own evidence of treason, purposefully giving out misinformation and directing their agents to violate your 4th and 14th Amendment rights. So I ask you again, how many people in Tennessee have a CPS case opened right now or have had a CPS case open since December of 2016? Because right now we are actually having the FBI put together a full investigation on the state of Tennessee and the CPS agencies. If you want your case to be involved in that investigation, I suggest you go fill out this form. You can find the link to this form right on my website. Once you get to my website, simply scroll down till you see Tennessee CPS Treason. File a complaint. Once you click on that, you will be redirected back to this site right here. You guys, this is dereliction of duty. It's deprivation of rights. It's actually even treason because the judges are adjudicating these cases based on fraud. And so now your judges are even on the hook. And anybody involved in the case who is actively involved in violating the law. You guys, never let a CPS agent in your home without a warrant.
You guys, every single Child Protective Service case is absolute fraud upon the court right from the very beginning. When a CPS agent submits an affidavit of truth under the penalties of perjury stating that he or she has firsthand personal knowledge of the events, they are absolutely committing fraud upon the court. There is no way that a CPS agent could have firsthand knowledge of the events. When a judge submits a removal order based on that fraud, the judge has now committed fraud himself. Especially when the judge signs off on that removal order in his administrative capacity and not his judicial capacity. Remember me showing you the difference? This is an administrative capacity. It has no legal or lawful authority behind it. Zero. This is a judicial capacity. It has the judge's signature, the judge's title, the judge's name, the judge's jurisdiction, and the seal of the court. For all of those who are telling me that that is not correct, check this out. Scanby Manufacturing Company versus Tryon, 9th Circuit Court from 1968. The district court held that the injunction signed by only the deputy clerk of the district court is void for what of judicial signature, Section 1691 of Title 28 U.S. Code, which was not called to the attention of the district court, provides that all writs and process issuing from a court of the United States shall be under the seal of the court and signed by the clerk thereof. So not only does a legitimate court order or a warrant have to be signed in the judicial capacity with the seal of the court, it also must be signed and endorsed with the clerk of court. Guys, wake up! Every single district court case involving CPS is 100% fraud.
You guys, welcome to Truth Hurtz Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is going to be a very special show because not only are we teaching you the differences between a legal and lawful court order, and it doesn't matter if you are in a criminal case, it doesn't matter if you're in a civil case, a traffic court, it doesn't matter. Every single case coming in and out of these courts, for the majority, from what I've seen, are absolutely fraud. They're no longer legal and they're no longer lawful if they are not adjudicated properly and signed off and endorsed by the court. Now, there's a difference between the court and the judge. The judge is not the court. The judge is a officer of the court. You guys, my name is Malibu Dallas. Thank you for joining us. If you are looking at gaining more information in regards to your case, either a CPS case, family court case, criminal case, it doesn't matter. These are all going to apply because why? It's all revolving around constitutional law. Constitutional law supersedes policies, procedures, codes, statutes, you name it. It supersedes that no matter what. And it doesn't matter if we're going off of the state's constitution. Doesn't matter if we're going off the original Constitution. In fact, your state's Constitution has to align with the original Constitution. So when I'm going to show you the differences, and I touched a little bit about in that TikTok video, you saw it. This is what looks to be, if you didn't know any better, a legal and lawful signature. You have the judge's name, you have the judge's title, and you have a little scribble for the signature. But if you didn't know any better, you would think that that was a legal and lawful signature, and you would go about your day and go, great, I have a court order. Well, in fact, no. What you basically have right there is toilet paper. Because it doesn't matter what's inside of that court order. It literally does not matter what that court order lists. As long as it's signed like this and it's not endorsed by the court, it's not legal or lawful. It's basically toilet paper, okay? What is a lawful court order look like? Again, we touched base in the TikTok video. So you have your judge's signature, you have the seal of the court, you have the judge's name, and you have the judge's title, and you have the judge's jurisdiction. All of those are what you need in order for a court order to be legal and lawful. You also need to find out where the clerk of court signature is. Even if it has all of these issues, it has all of this. It has the judge's signature, the seal, the judge's name, the jurisdiction. It has all that. If it does not have the clerk's signature, that order is no longer legal or lawful. So you have to have all of those elements inside of that court order in order for it to be of the court. Doesn't matter if it's criminal court, civil court, whatever. All writs. Okay. Let me show you this. Let's see if I can find it here real quick. I think this is it. Yeah. So if you look right here at Title 28 U.S. Code 1691, seal and test of process. All, that's a big word, all writs and processes issuing from a court of the United States. If you notice how it says of a court of the United States, it doesn't say civil court, criminal court, or anything. It's entitled, it's encompassing of all courts. All writs and processes issuing from a court of the United States shall be under the seal of the court and signed by the clerk thereof. You guys, we are trying to get you to understand that just because you have something that looks like it's legal and lawful doesn't mean that it is. You could have the judge issuing you everything under the sun against you in a court order, civil court, CPS court, criminal court, it doesn't matter. If it's not correctly endorsed by the court and coming from the court and of the court, you guys, I hate to break it to you, but it's just toilet paper, okay? And what can you do if you do come across that? What can you do to mitigate, and find remedy for that process if it's not being adjudicated correctly and issued correctly? Okay, well, that's a due process violation. Okay, it's abuse of power. And obviously, when that happens, the judge lacks jurisdiction. Okay, you can actually file a motion to dismiss and vacate the order simply based on the fact that they're not being, the court orders are not even of the court. Okay, now I'm telling you all this not as a lawyer. Okay, I'm not a lawyer. Everything that we teach you here, everything that we talk about is basically for educational purposes. If you are looking at getting legal advice, I suggest you track down a legal and competent lawyer who knows what they're talking about in your area, which, in my opinion, that's going to be pretty hard because I don't find very many competent lawyers out there. So if you are looking at your court order, you need to find out if it's a legal and lawful court order. Once again, not legal or lawful. You want to find your court order that looks exactly like this. Okay. You guys, I'm going to bring on a special guest today. I wanted to touch base just in the beginning of the show of how these judges are defrauding you and continuing to defraud you in the process of basically trafficking your children through family court and CPS court. Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about CPS and family court and these so-called judges. And in my opinion, they're not even real judges. They're administrative personnel acting as judges. And that's fraud. Okay. And I think it's one of the biggest reasons why you're not seeing a court order actually issued in their judicial capacity, because administrative judges, I don't think they have the power to do court order in a judicial capacity. Now, yes, a judge has the authority to operate in his judicial capacity or their administrative capacity. But in my opinion, now I could be wrong. You can argue the fact that we might not have had any legitimate judges since the late, 1700s, the late 1800s. So you might, that's a little something that you might want to do some research on. But today's show is multifaceted. Today's show is, we're not only just teaching you how to recognize a faulty court order and to fight it and to bring, shed light on it. Today, we are literally talking about how the states are committing fraud on a mass level and even treason, guys. Treason. Some people are going to argue the fact that what we are about to show you doesn't constitute treason. I argue, and my special guest will certainly argue, just the opposite. Okay? When you are actively instructing your state employees to circumvent the Constitution in a manner of which we're about to show you, it definitely constitutes treason. And every single state is involved in it. Every single state. We are going to be presenting evidence on a few states today, but I guarantee you, if you do the same research in your state, you're going to find similar results. So let me bring on my special guest today, guys. His name is Gunnar, and he is insanely smart. He's been doing a ton of research, and the amount of work that he has been doing, not just in Tennessee, but for the last week, he's been reviewing policies and procedures for almost every single state. And I am very impressed with what he's been able to come up with.
Excuse me. I would, in fact, at one point when I get my organization up and running, my 501c3, I would love to have Gunnar and his wife to come on board to the program and help us do legal research full time. Because one of my biggest goals is to be able to travel around the country and teach you guys face to face, maybe on bigger seminars, training programs, and watch you grow. Watch you go from a very frightened, scared, emotional parent who doesn't think that they have the authority or the power to stand up for your own rights and operate in court by yourself and fight for your children, and just watch you do a 180. Watch you do a 180 going from that to somebody who is so insanely powerful that you don't even recognize yourself, after the training, because you're going to feel so empowered. You're going to know your rights. You're going to learn how to stand on your rights, and you're going to learn how to stand on those rights in court, right? That's our biggest goal right now, is to make sure that the American people start learning their rights, because if you don't know your rights in the eyes of the law, you don't have any rights. And that is so insanely scary, guys. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on my special guest, Gunnar, and his lovely wife, Rose. I'm going to have them tell a little bit about their story on why they're here and what they've been experiencing. And then we're going to dive into how exactly these states are committing fraud. And you're going to be surprised. Okay. So everybody, welcome in Gunnar and Rose. They are living in Tennessee, actually, and they have firsthand knowledge of a lot of the stuff happening in Tennessee. So how you doing, Gunnar?
Doing good. Glad to be here. Glad to kind of get the word out and spread the information, the knowledge, and empower the people. And that's what this country's been founded on, is we the people, that I think the people have forgotten. We're the ones that wrote the contract, not the government. It's not the opposite. And people need to understand the Constitution itself is a contract. It's contract law between us and our representatives. And understand, we're the ones that wrote it. We're the ones that enforce it. And we've been misinformed of things, of like words like democracy, when we don't have a democracy. We have a constitutional republic. There's been misinformation, misguided. Why? Because presidential orders have allowed misinformation to go out all the way back from the Obama term, that allowed this misinformation to be publicized amongst the people. And so basically you're getting rhetoric or anything they want to tell you, and they're not telling you the truth, and they're hiding everything. And they're able to do
Obama, when Obama took office, he actually passed a what do you call it?
Executive order. Mm-hmm.
Issuing and reestablishing propaganda within inside of the United States. And that's where all that comes from.
Absolutely. And the biggest issue to the core of it actually comes down to is, one, we have become so codependent on our system that it's become so scary that we have traded our rights and our freedoms for being comfortable. Why? Because even the poorest of people have a phone connected to the internet. I mean, if you really think about that, to be entertained and distracted. People got to understand the Colosseum in Rome wasn't built to do nothing more than to distract the people from what the government was doing. Right. I mean, that's history now. And I love history because we go a lot into history, where it came from and how it was formed. The original part of CPS throughout history was designed after the World Wars, is to have a place for orphans to go, that people that had lost their family during the World Wars, and there was nothing there. It was some rich institutions out of New York City that actually started it, and that began to grow throughout the states. But then somebody saw an opportunity to make money. Now, here's the sad part. Most people don't know. Every single one of these states, Department of Children and Family Services, every single one of them ran a sanitarium in their state. If you want some dark research, look at what sanitariums did and why Ronald Reagan shut them down. It's some horror stories, people. I mean, horror. I mean, the worst of the worst you could imagine. There ain't even a horror movie that's that bad compared to people I know that have even been to the one outside of Nashville, Tennessee, that we had here. And the nightmare stories that made national news. But it's scary that they've run, and once we cut them off from that, they had to look for another source of income. So what did they get into? Child Protective Services. Do you know every state CPS or DCS only gets involved with families, not individuals or persons. Those automatically go to the police department. And it's in their policies and procedures.
In Texas, CPS can't even accept anonymous calls anymore. You know, the whole anonymous, referral coming into their hotline. CPS can't even take those in anymore. They, all of your calls have to be rerouted to a local or state police agency in order for them to filter out any kind of fraud, any kind of misfiling, because there's too many people who are using these hotlines and these referral programs to, weaponize CPS. Oh, you piss off your neighbor or, whatever. And before you know it, you got a falsified report being called onto you. And now you have to deal with CPS for 18 months, 2 years or whatever, if you don't know the law, if you don't know your rights. And that's a scary thing.
Actually, that's a socialism program that more recently that China has involved. And we've seen that in the news to where they have somebody go around and evaluate you in your community. And if you don't hit the community standards by the reviewer, you get docked. It's the same program in a different country. It's got, same boss as the old boss, the new boss is. It's nothing different. They're doing this in other countries. They just have different names for it. Comply. There's some states
right.
Once you're in their system, you don't get out.
And you're going to see that word comply a lot. If you don't comply, if you don't consent or you don't comply, we're going to take extra action.
Listen, there's a state out there that says in their policies and procedures, they go beyond the court systems. Just because the court has ruled doesn't mean their services stop. You must comply.
Right.
You got
Gunner, you have your lovely wife Rose with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, just a little bit of what you're experiencing or have experienced in Tennessee and why you're doing the fight that you're doing?
Well, what had happened is we had gotten married. I have older children. She had younger children. But we have 3 children in the home that are, what's the word I'm looking for? Neurodivergent. Now, my wife has a degree in psychology and early childhood development. In other words, she has the same stuff as these caseworkers do. So she's very familiar with the proficiencies, their policies, procedures, their psychological warfares, the whole
so she can just go through all those reports and just pick them apart easily.
Oh, no, she went further than that. She figured out how they were trafficking children and stealing your children and looking good to the public and the judges.
Sounds about right.
So they take, and she's in the interview with the kids and stuff. And in Tennessee, if you give up your kids, that's a Class C felony. So in front of
so you're saying in Tennessee, if you relinquish your authority or your parental rights just on your own
to your parents,
that's a felony.
To your uncle, anything else, it's a Class C felony. That is a child abandonment. This was done by a CPS worker right in front of a sheriff's deputy, and he did nothing trying to coerce her into doing that. Now, when you do that, they run across the street to the criminal courtroom and the DA and go, they just abandoned their child, charge him with a felony. Now they can go back to the family court and go, well, she's under felony conviction now, Your Honor. We want full possession of the kid. See how quick that worked?
Wow.
Got your kid now.
Seems like that's pretty streamlined. That's pretty streamlined, right?
They use a lot of mental, emotional manipulation to try to coerce you into it. I was attacked with a lot of propaganda. It's our job to protect children. And they didn't like it that I knew it was my job to protect my children. But, it's our job to protect children. We need to make sure they're in a safe place. Who do you have that they could go to while we sort this out? Who will take your children? Do you have family? Do you have a church group? Do you have who do you have in your life that will take care of your children while we help you sort through this?
State employee coercing someone to commit a Class C felony.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Wow.
Now you see how they look so good to everybody in public in the courts.
Just makes your stomach curl, doesn't it? Just like, it's like,
it gets worse. Then you have caseworkers, and you can bring up the one with the forgery. The caseworker.
Which one is that out of Tennessee?
That IEP, that I blacked out some of the information there.
I think I don't think I have that one
yesterday. Anyway.
Yeah, I think I don't have that one up here in the studio.
Okay. So we had hard evidence that and she was there and witnessed it, and she had an advocate friend of hers there helping her during the time with the CAC. Well, we have neurodivergent children, and they all vary on the different spectrum and been diagnosed this and that. Now, understanding too, she lost her husband to a heart attack, to a COVID-19 lockdown with children by herself. That's enough trauma alone, let alone moving all the way across the country from California to move across the country and do all this with the lockdown, this and that. And now you're trying to deal with, your healing and your loss and, just trying to just go through that as well as your kids and not understanding what the traumas were or anything else. But you're talking about a mental health case. Our caretaker or our mental health professional was there and did the initial reports and lowered it to the lowest one, knowing the child's information.
Okay. Long story short, we dealt with a mandated report that I was involved in because I knew it had to be done, and we didn't want to get in trouble if somebody found out, and then it hadn't been reported. And then it turned into a caseworker showing up at our home, entering the home without my explicit permission, written or spoken. He was gone. It was his household, so we had to deal with that.
Premarital asset. The home was a premarital asset that I alone have property rights to. Yes. That I had never got permission or a warrant to enter my home, nor was I ever notified.
Yes. And then to a forensic interview, coerced forensic interviews for our other children. And then we were basically thrown into the system, separated and thrown into the system. He had a child removed from our home completely. My children, by an act of God, stayed with me. And we are actually, today is 2 years.
Yeah.
We've been dealing with this for 2 years today.
Wow.
And you're talking about like my son was interviewed by the CAC with no permission from the parents. And then he went on the stand and lied and said he got permission. Here's the problem. I have evidence, hard evidence of my side of the phone conversation, and my phone records. I only spoke to him once that day, and I denied that I wanted services, and I didn't agree to anything, and he still signed it.
So we're dealing with coercion, forgery, kidnapping.
Coercion, intimidation, threats, extortion, kidnapping.
Threats, yes.
Yeah.
I was threatened several times.
That's 5 felonies within inside a couple seconds.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. And this is how they operate when you don't want to be compliant and do everything they ask of you. And this is how.
And that's the thing is people have got to understand the word compliant is not even a thing when it comes to CPS.
No.
These agencies don't have any legal or lawful authority backing them up unless they have a court order. There is no law in any state. I don't care what state you live in. There is no law that says you have to comply or consent or aid them in their investigation against you unless there is a legal and lawful court order.
Unfortunately, they use a lot of manipulation tactics. I didn't know going into it. We did not know going into it. We've had to educate ourselves all the way through to where we are now. And
by the way, there are states that do publish. They do have that right.
They do. Unfortunately.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that real quick.
Let's
see here.
Pick a state.
Yeah, let's pick a state. Let's see. We have my case has been going on almost a year. Yeah, see, and that's typical, Jennifer. Is that cases will they will draw out their case as long as they possibly can in order to continue to collect federal funding. It's not about the safety of your children.
Nope.
It never has been, and it never will be. Your state CPS agencies, your family courts, It's all about federal funding and how long we can actually keep the case open. They don't care about the safety of your children. They don't care about anything about your family. They will break the bond and they will separate you. They will destroy your family, all for federal funding. So I've seen cases that have been opened up for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's really sad. I mean, it's really sad to see that.
Listen, I appreciate the comments you gave me earlier about just doing research and some of the different things that I do. Listen, there's a term that a lot of people need to understand. It's called autodidact. What it means is you have the ability to self-teach, self-learn. In other words, I can read the book, understand, comprehend, and execute it, but I don't need a piece of paper that says I read the book and get my little gold star. There are so many people out there. Listen, my grandfather had a 6th grade education and was the general foreman on the Chicago Skyway. Super stuff's built. It doesn't take that. It takes experience. It takes the ability to learn. And that's what half of this is that I think Dallas and I both push is we want you to be autodidact. We want you to be your biggest advocate. We want you to learn and understand for yourselves. Why? Because it doesn't help it if it comes around again. You've got somebody else trying to fight your battles. You are your best advocate and your best pro se and defender of your families.
Yes.
100%. And that's what I teach everybody. It's like, listen, you don't need a lawyer. Lawyer's very first sworn oath and duty is to the state and to the court, not you as a client. I don't care if you spend $50,000 on an attorney. I don't care if it's a court-appointed attorney. Court-appointed attorneys are way worse. But every single attorney in this country has a very first sworn oath and duty to the state and to the court. Okay, it's a corpus.
Right there is your guardian ad litems.
Corpus juris secundum. Corpus juris secundum, volume 7, subsection 76. Okay, it states that every attorney's duty is to the state and to the court, not the client. I want you guys to understand that you guys are far more powerful representing yourself either as a pro se litigant or represent yourself as a sui juris litigant, you know, in your proper personal, you know, forum. Never refer to yourself as a parent or anything like that. You are a living woman. You are a living man. You are not a corporate fiction. Okay. Some of you out there might be thinking, oh my God, what, he's going into some crazy stuff. But I'm telling you, I'm being 100% honest with you. These systems are looking at you as a corporation, as a dead entity. I am a living person. I am a living person. I have blood and running through my veins. I have a soul. I'm living on the land. I have more power representing myself in court because I have a voice. The reason why these court systems want you to have an attorney is because now the judge, the CPS agents, the CPS's lawyers, your attorney, they're all paid by the courts. They all work together. They all work together to manipulate the case in a way that they want to see it go. And you're too incompetent to speak to your case. The judge doesn't want to hear you. The judge wants nothing to do with you because you have an attorney. Your attorney will speak for you. And I guarantee you the majority of those attorneys, they're not going to do a damn thing on your case.
I got one for you.
It suits you to learn the law, learn a little bit about court procedure, and fight for your children yourself.
Our first hearing in juvenile court, during the hearing, I actually brought up constitutional issues to them, saying this is not legal, this is not applicable, it's not here, this this is unconstitutional. That magistrate literally said on the record, we don't deal with constitutional issues in this courtroom. I go, isn't that your first oath there, Jack? So we're just throwing the Constitution out. I'm glad that you made that clear that family courts do not follow the Constitution. I'm glad that you put that out there.
I'm going to show you guys something. And before we move on, I'm going to show you guys something. This is a 14-page PDF that I put together. Okay. CPS fraud upon the court. Let's look at the purple section real quick, guys. American jurisprudence. We're talking about the Constitution versus state statutes. Now, if we read this, if you can see it, it says in quotes, if the Constitution prescribed one rule and the statute another in a different rule, it is the duty, guys, it is the duty of the courts to declare that the Constitution and not the statutes govern the cases before them for judgment. When you say that a judge was telling you that we don't go by the Constitution here, well, he's violating his own laws, his own regulations put forth in the American jurisprudence. If you don't know what American jurisprudence, guys, is it's a legal encyclopedia showing, teaching lawyers and judges the actual freaking law. And it states it right there in American jurisprudence. You have to adjudicate your case by the Constitution, not statute.
Now, the importance of the Chevron that comes into this is that they didn't have to follow that, or they could take and decide for themselves what applied to them and what didn't. With the reversal of the Chevron doctrine, that means they now have to go back to the way it was supposed to be. But you got to understand, they've been doing it for over 40 years, which means
since 1984,
everybody is used to, I'll interpret it however I want. Well, the Supreme Court now, and now here's going to be the balance in the system of kicking it back, of saying, Your Honor, you can't do that anymore because that's been overturned. You have to follow this. But once again, how many cases have they already taken and seen? Like in our state of Tennessee, you can't commit treason and sedition against your things and your courts be legit. Therefore, every court up to 2016 of December is considered null and void by the Constitution itself.
It's even crazier. It's even crazier when you learn that your CPS case has been built on fraud from the very beginning, because a caseworker cannot submit an affidavit into court under the penalties of perjury stating that the allegations are true in fact, and I have personal firsthand knowledge. That cannot happen. When they submit that document into court, they are now submitting a fraudulent document into court, which means it's fraud upon the court. Check this out. Here we go. If a judge willingly and knowingly ignores signs of fraud and he still adjudicates the case based on that fraud upon the court, the judge now loses subject matter jurisdiction. The judge cannot adjudicate a case on fraud. Every single order, if it's legal, lawful, or not, is void. And every single judge and every single CPS case in this country is being built and operated and adjudicated upon fraud upon the court. We've got to understand this, guys. We've got to understand it. That's how you're going to fight it. The more you understand, the more knowledge you'll have to fight it. So yeah, CPS doesn't even follow judges' orders. Trust me. You guys, let's... Yeah, right. Let's look at the Tennessee. The whole entire reason why we are starting this off is because of what we found in the Tennessee Clients' Rights Handbook. Okay. Now, I touched base on this a little bit in the intro on the video, but I want you guys to understand that it goes a lot further than that. Okay. So let's go to page 6, and I want Gunner to narrate this for you.
I may have to pull that up on my side over here. You're a little small.
No, right here. Right here. If you can read that, it's going to be bigger on their screens. But if you can read this right here on the second paragraph down.
Okay. At the onset of the investigation, the investigator will hold an initial interview with your child to determine their immediate safety. This interview will take place away from the alleged abuser, either at the home, school, or in another safe location, and your consent is not required for an interview to take place. That goes against federal case law. Several federal case laws.
Your consent is not required for an interview to take place.
In your home. Private property. Matter of fact,
you
there's
guys,
a federal judge that turned around and said, you can't come inside. Matter of fact, here's a little nugget. That particular judge said too that these CPS people you have to have a warrant, or an emergency or extenuating circumstances are the only two ways a CPS agent can enter. Anything else is coercion, he said. You can't even give permission to enter, as some states even say you can. Goes against federal case law. They've defined it. It's a clear violation of both the 4th and 14th Amendment, and quotes older case law, and even gets onto the people that had this go on to them, chastise them, say, you should have known better. Would you want somebody just coming in your house and doing this and that as freely as they want to? No. That's why we have the Constitution. So basically, when they enter the home, they're technically, with no warrant, no better than somebody breaking and entering in your home trying to kidnap your children. Anybody heard of Castle Doctrine? Second Amendment?
Yep.
What did you do? I defended my home against somebody breaking and entering with no warrant, coming to steal my children, and verbalized it.
Yep. And you guys, this is right from the Tennessee Clients' Rights Handbook, and it was published. If you can see there, the state published it in December of 2016. They're publishing their own acts of treason, and what they do is they're literally telling you that we are enforcing and instructing our workers, our public servants,
paying them
to circumvent the Constitution, and we're going to pay them to do so with federal funding
and state funding.
By
the FBI's definition of domestic terrorism, it meets the definition.
Guys, if you understood, like if you truly fucking comprehended what we are saying right now, your mind would literally just right. So let's look at a different state. I live in Texas. Hey,
at least
these wonderful people
trying correct it.
The thing about Texas is, try. The thing about Texas, guys, is that Texas contradicts a lot of what their policies are stating from one to another. So let's look at this real quick. And if the text is too small for you, I apologize. I don't know. Maybe you can blow it up on your screen or something like that. But look at the Texas Department of Policies and Procedures now. 2243.1, consent to enter the home. In a two-person household, if one person gives consent for the caseworker to enter the home, but the other parent expressly refuses entry, the caseworker must not enter the home without a court order or exigent circumstances. Do you notice how they say legal and lawful court? They don't say legal and lawful court order. Right? You ever notice that? Even if the law enforcement has consent or a court order, the entry to the home, the caseworker must obtain explicit consent separately from the law enforcement or obtain a court order to enter the house. Now that all sounds great.
CPS is not law enforcement and are not connected under law enforcement right there.
They have, and it doesn't matter what state you live in, guys, they have no legal or lawful authority behind them without an actual legal and lawful court order. Let's continue.
Interference with your locally constitutionally elected sheriff. That's their duty. They're interfering with them.
The parent or other individual with authority to consent may revoke consent at any time. The caseworker must obtain consent each time he or she seeks to enter the home. You guys, that is, okay, this, what I just read to you, sounds perfect of what a policy should be. But let's continue. Let's see how they actually contradict themselves. 2242.11, determining whether a child has capacity to consent. This is fucking insane to me, guys. If an adult is not present, the caseworker may seek consent from a child if the caseworker determines that the child has the capacity to consent. You guys, I put right here in red, big, bold letters because I want you to understand that a minor does not have the mental capacity to consent. That's like California passing a law saying that a child who's 12 years old has the capacity to determine their medical autonomy, or I can't even speak. So you, as a child at 12 years old, can legally tell your parents to F off and say, hey, I'm going to transition. I'm going to take care of my own medical issues, and I don't need your consent. In fact, your parents in California now need to be put on a form with your consent to have any kind of information with your medical information. That's freaking insane, right? So let's continue. If a child is old enough to be left home alone or left in charge of another child at the home, the caseworker may reasonably assume that the child has the capacity to provide meaningful consent. You guys, this is called coercion of a minor.
Uh-huh.
And you are violating the rights and federal laws against a minor.
Not even following property rights.
It's freaking insane, guys. So let's go back. Remember this first paragraph that I showed you and read to you? Yeah, that's pretty much been trashed just by this statement alone. Okay, so let's continue, shall we? Exigent circumstances. Okay, what they're basically saying here is we can enter your home if we deem something to be exigent circumstances. Exigent circumstances to enter the home, exit only. Wait, did I read that right? Exist only when the caseworkers and supervisor determine, based on the totality of the circumstances, that there is reasonable cause to believe that the child is in imminent danger or physical or sexual abuse. You guys, I put down here a case law for you. An unreasonable belief of imminent harm to a child will render a seizure unreasonable. That's Wallace versus Spencer, and that's a United States Supreme Court, or not Supreme Court, but Ninth Circuit Court ruling. Okay, that's from the year 2000. That's never been overturned. That still stands as today. That's still case law today. Makes me sick. Right? That's not just the only one. Let's look at oh God, let's look at Oregon.
Let me interject one thing here so people understand this too. Each one of these states' policies and procedures is also a contract between you and them if you sign up for their willing services. This says, I'm agreeing to allow these services to be done, and these are the services you're going to provide. You also have to look at every single one of these as contract law. So within contract law, within any contract within the United States, you have to have full disclosure. So when you have gray areas in a contract, it's null and void so long as, and it has to be very clear. You can't have, like one state had something like in-home care versus out-of-home care. Well, in-home care is just the opposite of out-of-home care. Boy, that was really creative. That doesn't describe anything, nor is it anything binding. It's a big loophole because you have to define it.
Yep. Oh, you guys, let's look at Georgia real quick.
Oh, Lord, you're going to go there.
Georgia.
Oh, Lord.
Anybody living in Georgia.
You guys, if you live in Georgia and you're watching this in Georgia, take notes, and I'm so very sorry because this is what they're doing to you in Georgia. Okay, so we're going to go down.
Let's point out, too, all these things that we're pointing out and we are giving to the FBI, as well as we are having civil suit, as well as a class action suit going on with some of this stuff. This is stuff that any case that they're dealing with right now is actually because they are committing treason actively today is null and void.
I think I uploaded the wrong PDF for Georgia.
Looks like
I don't know which one you sent me, Gunnar.
I don't know which one that is.
That's not the right one for Georgia. We're going to have to do a separate video for Georgia.
Georgia's got enough for its own video series and the whole 9 yards. So does like Wyoming and some of the rest of them. Holy, I'm just telling you.
All right, Vermont. If you live in Vermont. All right, here we go.
It's also rough. They're all rough.
So in Vermont, the assessments, okay, while staff may commence an assessment by phone, some assessments may warrant. How do you do an assessment by phone? That's I don't understand that.
I don't know. I
Some,
mean, they like to throw that in there like they're using it as an option. Well, I called you and told you I'm coming into your home. That's how they get by with that. Oh, trust me, we've
Right.
got stories from Vermont and other places we've heard that, well, it says it right here that I could come in and I did phone call you before I came. That's not what that says.
right. So while
Oh.
staff may commence an assessment by phone, some assessments may warrant an announcement or an unannounced visit. Wow. Caretaker using opiates with young children or hazardous conditions at the home. This just doesn't make any sense to me, guys. I don't know how they can get these policies approved or whatnot.
And what's with this term that we found too? Go back one page there, Tal. Notice I highlighted division. This term or this entity is constantly showing up in several states. Now, my question is
the division.
the division is. This is something we need to research eventually because it's one of those things that either it's because some states take and they don't have them, they're not employed by the state, they're subcontractors. So if they're subcontractors, it could be a main corporation, okay, with several different satellite offices in every state. But if they have a centralized computerized system, they are now sharing stuff state to state without the state's consent. Think about that for a minute. Violates state sovereignty. So you're sharing stuff without a warrant or going to another state. They're trying to build a national platform system, which some of them take and actually allude to in their stuff, that they're actually building a database that will share everything amongst every state.
Right. So Faith says, what about if it's a county ran child protection and not state? But here's the thing, Faith, is all of your procedures and statutes and policies, they're all being published and ran and approved at a state level.
Yeah, that's what they operate under.
They're still collecting federal funding and they're still collecting state funding, which means that they are bound to follow all state provisions and state and federal provisions. So it doesn't matter if it's a county ran CPS or a state ran CPS or if it's a privately ran CPS.
And just so you know, the research has been done. Every state constitution does have a default clause in there that refers back to the Constitution of the United States of America, that it is the supreme law of the land in every state's constitution. It does exist.
Right. Before we go into this, we're going to continue with Vermont, but I want to show you guys something. If you look at some of this case law that we have, and all of these case laws are current and they're federal, so that you can use these in your motions, in your petitions, in your case, or whatever you're doing inside of your current case. Since we're dealing with drugs, a lot of families are being accused of drugs and whatnot, but the assumption of drug use, if you look at number 2, the assumption of drug use constitutes neglect inappropriately shifts the focus from the welfare of the child to the behavior of the parent. So it's never about the welfare of the child, so it's about the parent. Okay? The parenting, not the supposed quality of the individual who is the parent, should be at issue. Okay? This is huge because it shows you that the mere presence of drugs does not constitute imminent danger. Okay? Now, I don't advocate for parents doing drugs. I don't advocate for that at all. But what I'm saying is every single CPS agency and every single parent and child, per the Constitution, is afforded due process. 100%. Okay? Let's look at number 5. We read this earlier. An unreasonable belief of imminent danger or imminent harm to a child will render a seizure unreasonable. Okay? This is huge. Number 6 is huge, guys. The right to procedural due process is violated. The state, now this is coming from a circuit court for appeals. Okay? The right to procedural due process was violated. The state denied the plaintiff the fundamental right to a fair procedure before having their children removed by the intentionally use of fraudulent evidence during the procedure. You're supposed to have a fair hearing according to due process before they even think about removing your children. They got to go in front of a judge and present their so-called evidence and proof of imminent danger before they even remove your children. You see what I'm saying? So these are the things that we're trying to get you guys to understand when we're going through.
Dallas, that's why, how can you give firsthand testimony of something in the home when you're being denied entry into the home?
Right.
Because that's a lot of them are filling this out of that's justification to enter the home because I feel like. That's not probable cause. And there are many warrants that we're seeing has been issued just off the thing of I suspect. Feelings court. Right.
What about the 72-hour policy holds? If your children are being removed under an emergency removal, they have to still articulate what gave them that probable cause to remove your children because of imminent danger. And they still have to write it. They have to write it down inside of their emergency removal order. It has to be detailed. And they can't just say, hey, we're taking your kids under emergency removal. And even if they do, they still have to get you in front of a judge within 72 hours. Mm-hmm. If they don't, they're violating due process, civil procedure, federal law, constitutional law, you name it, and it's done. CPS never follows due process.
Never.
In any case, you got to understand that. I don't care what state you live in. CPS does not follow due process. Okay. So let's go back to Vermont. Let's go back over here. You see down the highlighted area. The following factors inform a determination about whether the child is safe. You're telling me that you're going to determine whether my child is safe for at least one danger. At least one danger indicator is presented, and there may be protective capacities that can mitigate the danger.
Under full disclosure, where's the list of dangers to quantify them?
Right.
They don't exist. Loophole.
So one indicator of danger. What's that? That could be anything. That could be anything.
It's also very subjective, and pretty much every state we've run through so far leaves it up to the caseworkers to decide what is and what is not okay. And so that's extremely subjective because they're coming in from a completely different point of view than what your family is.
Yeah.
They do not respect parents. They do
so
not
what I think might be a danger, you might think is perfectly normal.
Exactly.
Oh, they're lobbying right now with all their senators and everything else to overturn the Chevron or pass a law that would permanently overturn it because of what we're discovering. Because what this should have been done, the way this should have been done is when the local states or any of the lower courts or anything else, federal courts take and make a decision either off of the Constitution or something about federal statute or something, the lower courts are supposed to follow those rulings, including the train of thought in the submission by the federal judge that dictates or defines or further defines what, say, the Constitution or what it covers and what it doesn't. Under Chevron, they get to pick and choose what they do, and that used to be the job of a comptroller. So when certain cases came up, they would follow them in the federal courts and then have to go back to, say, the states and say, now, because of this ruling, what do we have to change in our state laws and policies and procedures to become compliant? We don't have to for 40 years because of Chevron. They're 40 years backed up on case law that has not been applied.
Right.
That's the issue. Had they been following these things, half of this stuff wouldn't even come to exist.
Just it makes you sick. And yes, Nadia, it's very, very scary. Very scary. Let's continue for Vermont. There's one more thing, and there's a couple more things in here. Investigation. if it is necessary to ensure a child's safety, all alleged victims or other children in the home may be interviewed without the permission of the child's parents, guardian, or custodian. That is treason, guys. That Vermont is actively telling you that they don't have to follow the law. They don't have to
And
follow
there's a lot of states that have it, guys. A lot of your states, I see you guys in here. It's in there, man. It's in there. And all it takes is us coming together to put a stop to this and terminate it. This has enough of what we're doing to shut down CPS and DCS in every state as being unconstitutional and basically treason, just flat out treason, because all of their workers have already actively participated in it. Therefore, they can't use anything. And here's the multiplier. It all deals with crimes with children. That's a 3 times multiplier, if I remember correctly, for any sentencing. 3 times. So if you're sentenced to 7 years, that turned into 21 years because it deals with a child. So,
and a lot of these people don't. I mean, you have rights. Your children's rights are being violated, and that's crimes against children, and that's what he's talking about.
And you know what's sad? Most of these caseworkers and everything else, what's required, have a college degree and or a master's degree, but can't understand the basic rights of the Constitution. How's that higher education paying off? Because you're just committing treason against your own people.
Yeah, we actually laugh because our caseworker has the same exact psychology degree that I do. And then he has a master's in education. Well, I've been teaching my children for over 10 years, and I have tons of experience with children over time. And my education meant absolutely nothing in court because I was a parent.
Experience. We're just going to throw all that experience. Why? Because it's, we'll listen to somebody that deals with theory, not actual kids. And by the way, how many of your caseworkers actually have children? Because most of ours are in their 20s or early 30s. Nope, no kids. Why are people that have no children telling families that have children, raising them, what to do? I want somebody to answer me that. I want a judge. I'm going to have a federal judge answer me that.
I see. Here's the thing for me is I don't personally have my own biological children, but I was a victim of child trafficking. Okay, I understand the system so insanely well that, and I know the law better than most probably attorneys do, but that's why I'm trying to educate the parents, because the parents need to be more informed of what the hell's going on in this country.
Absolutely.
And how their children are being trafficked. Here's the thing.
No, she was talking about the kids. She was doing this. She goes, you know what could happen is the name of that movie. What was it? Ants.
Oh, ants.
That once the grasshoppers figure out the ants.
Yeah, right. They'll all rise up.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know the ants.
All right.
Sorry,
all right. So to finish my sentence, thanks, Gunnar.
I'll buy you a shot.
To finish my sentence here is, I might not be a biological parent.
Right.
But I know the law. And one thing I do know is that CPS agents, social workers, caseworkers, they're not, most police officers nowadays aren't even being taught the freaking law. Mm-hmm. Right? They're just being given a badge and a gun and saying, hey, go enforce our policies, make some revenue, right? If CPS workers were just taught the law and went and had to go through classes and be certified in the freaking law, on top of being of having a social services degree, either master's or it doesn't matter what you're educated. It doesn't matter if you're a parent or not, as long as you know the law and that you know that people have rights. And that you are demanded by the law and the Constitution to obey those rights. And you better be well informed on if you do not abide by those, there are some serious consequences.
So that goes back to training. she pointed out, tell them what you found out about the training and stuff and how they just brainwash them. These young kids. I mean, she's done research on this. It's crazy for their teaching.
Thinking and believing that they're heroes. They have a hero complex because they're told you're doing this to protect the children. You're doing this to save the children. And by any means necessary, save the children. So these caseworkers are doing everything that they think is in their power to save the children. They've been brainwashed into it. They don't really know what they're doing because you're right. They are not trained and taught in the laws and people's rights. And they all check in with their supervisors. Every one of them in the middle of their cases, they check in with their supervisors. Their supervisors check in with their supervisors. So there's somebody up above who is telling them what action to take and what to do. It's actually pretty interesting to watch happen.
It's scary. You usually don't think that you're going to have to deal with this until it comes to your door. And you figure something such as, and there's cases with medical instances now, mental health instances, all these other things they're not trained to do, but they step in rather than taking and do that, or they ignore, like, particular mental health cases. They don't even bother with them. Why? Because it doesn't fit their persona, even though they're required to pull all those things. We had the GAL for one of them turn around and didn't pull any records until the end of it. And we did the appeal, then sent over a email request to send over medical records. Why didn't you have that? You were supposed to have that before the first hearing. You were supposed to meet with people before the first hearing. You were appointed by the court. They don't care. And called them out to the judge. Didn't care. How are you standing up for these kids' rights? You're supposed to be representing them in the best interest of the child. How, when you've never met them? Don't know anything about them. Don't know their medical history. Haven't talked to anybody. You just show up for court on the weekend.
Their idea of the best interest of the child is
CPS.
Whatever method, policy, procedure that they can extort or whatever they got to do in order to make more money.
Yes.
That's the interest of the child.
Oh, they kept her hostage the whole time during everything. Intimidated her, told her she couldn't testify on my behalf or anything. That's intimidation of a witness by a caseworker. Don't you do anything, this and that. I'll have you declared an unfit mother and take your kids. Right. We're going to get what we want. Until they screwed up and they cut her loose.
They did.
All right. So to continue with Vermont real quick, the second paragraph, it says, when an interview occurs without parental permission, the parent should be informed and interviewed as soon as it's reasonable and safe. So we're going to violate your rights. We're going to violate your children's rights. We're going to circumvent the Constitution. We're going to break federal law and state law. And then we're going to try to apologize for it later. Yeah. Yep. No. You need to be convicted of felony. You need to be convicted of treason. And you need to suffer the consequences of what treason comes with. Yes. In my opinion.
Well, we need to be supporting our local constitutionally elected sheriff, too, because he has the power to stop this. But a lot of them have been told and intimidated by their states to turn around and do nothing. Just stand aside.
Yeah.
Because
the thing is, that's exactly what it is. Police officers cannot interject themselves into a civil matter.
Funny, they won't take reports around here of criminal action at all.
No,
tried that one.
Right. But they're only allowed to interject themselves in criminal issues. But most police officers won't even do that anymore.
No.
Right. So let's look at Wyoming. How many of you people in here or watching this program are from Wyoming?
Sorry.
Careful. Don't scare them. You'll get shot. It says it in there. They have the ability to do it.
Is that Wyoming?
Yeah,
Wyoming. Primary household.
Feels threatened.
primary household, the home where the alleged safety threat occurs. Let's scroll down here to the bottom. Purpose. The Department of Family Services Department, or, quote unquote, or parentheses department, shall conduct a monthly face-to-face visit with the child or children, youth who have an open in-home and or placement case with the department to access safety and well-being and permanency.
Forget your Fourth Amendment. We're going to come in and assess how safe and well-being your permanency is, and you don't get a choice. No warrant.
Yep. So where does it say?
It's in the other one. It's in multiple uploads. Listen, guys, with some of these things you find when you go through researching your state, if you really want to go down those things, they have multiple different methods of putting their books out there. Some will hide them in a whole different website, not on a state website. They will give you a full digital thing where you have to interact. You can't download them individually unless you do it individually. Some of them do it page by page. The idea is to frustrate you and to get you to stop looking. Some of them are over 1,000 pages long. It is meant to discourage
1,600. I seen one that was 1,600 pages.
Yeah.
Yep.
Why do you need policies and procedures 1,600 pages long?
Further.
They bury it, and they bury some of it till they get down to their, I mean, it's not even in order. Some of it, it'll go through that, and then like towards the end, like a third or 3/4 of the way through, then they'll pop out a whole bunch of policy and procedures that are pertinent. Why was that even organized to be put there? It's hidden on purpose, guys. They play with this to hide it so they don't get caught.
New Hampshire. New Hampshire. Let's find out what New Hampshire has.
I
know you highlighted some. Did you highlight some
I
sections
haven't
of New Hampshire?
I haven't been to New Hampshire yet. No, I haven't gone on that one yet. That's somebody else's stuff.
Okay, I thought it was one that you provided. Let me see if I can find. You guys, the whole entire point of this, guys, is the fact that you have protections coming from the Constitution. When I say, if anybody ever says that you have constitutional rights, that's wrong. You don't have constitutional rights. You have rights that were afforded to you by God. And the Constitution is what's put in place as a contract to protect your rights. So you have constitutionally protected rights, and the Supreme Court and the federal government know that. Okay, so if we look at this list of federal case laws, you're going to see just how powerful you really are if you know how to represent it and stand on your rights with authority. Look at this number 8, right? I forgot to put number 9 in there, but court held that an anonymous tip standing alone never amounts to probable cause. I've been saying that from day one, guys. Day one. One simple anonymous call does not constitute probable cause. So if you get a caseworker that's coming to your home and saying, hey, we have a referral, we have certain concerns of the safety of these children. Okay, great. Do you have a warrant? Do you have a court order? No?
No, but I have an investigation to do.
Right. Well, I don't care about your policies and your investigation. For one, I don't work for you. I don't have to abide by your policies. I don't work for you. Right? Or do you have a warrant? Do you have a court order? No? Okay, well, turn your happy butt around and walk off my property. Come back when you have a legal and lawful court order to do so.
Let alone how many states, when I'm going through this, have violations of Fifth Amendment rights for you to not say a word. Even your children have that right not to talk, but it's constantly in there to coerce or intimidate you to say something. That's a clear violation over and over and over again.
I'd like to just mention too, because I saw somebody on a comment there. I'm pretty sure about every state I've read through so far, They say that they can interview your children at school without your permission. I believe that there is paperwork that you can file with your child's school to say that nobody is allowed to talk to them without first speaking with you.
That is called a rescission of parents patre. I have it actually. I used to have it on my website. I'm thinking about putting it back up because the rescission of parents patre, you need to be filing this with your school and your administrative office and your local county recorder's office.
Yeah, if you are homeschooling like I am and you don't already know about it, get a membership with HSLDA because they cover our butts on this. They are lawyers that we keep on retention for homeschoolers. So either file with your child's school or get with them because that is a big deal. They will try to backdoor it and get to your kid behind your back through school.
Because, and the reason that is that's considered public property. The law does differentiate between public property and private property. A lot of you may see videos where they're doing a First Amendment audit because they're standing on a sidewalk and recording something, or it's a public area and they're able to record. All of that is public and it is 100% legal. When you deal with some of the cases that you do with the federal case laws, they're very specific to say why they can't come in your home, because that's private property and you have a right to secure all your documents, evidence, and everything else in your home under the Fourth Amendment. And it's considered, undoable seizure. Now, when you take search. Now, when your children are interrogated on your private property, federal case law has already stated that is under the seizure part of the Fourth Amendment. Therefore, questioning anybody on private property without a warrant or an emergency circumstance, you can't do it. Just bottom line. It's private property. That's considered a Fourth Amendment violation of seizure, and it is defined by federal case law. They can't do it. Here's the thing too, guys, record. Sort out the rest later. They're going to get you in a tailspin. She'll tell you straight up.
Yeah, I regret not recording absolutely everything I should have.
They'll mess with your head. They're trained to blitz attack you is what it's called. It's called a blitz attack. They will hit you 5 and they will outnumber you every time that they can to get what they want. It's intimidation. So
look at number 4, guys. Defendant could not lawfully seize child without a warrant or a existence. I can't read that. Is that small? Existence of probable cause to believe the child was in imminent danger of harm, where police were not informed of any abuse or the child prior to arriving at caretaker's home, and found no evidence of abuse while there. Seizure of the child was not objectively reasonable and violated clearly established Fourth Amendment rights of the children or the child. You guys, this goes for even at the schools. Okay, now Gunnar was talking about it being public property, yes, but your children still have rights. They just don't know how to enforce them. And if a police officer or CPS agent violates those rights simply because the child doesn't know them, that's still a violation of their rights.
It's also a job of as a parent, you're supposed to be looking out for your children. They can't for themselves. So listen, we need to be advocating for our children and looking for any and everything way that people can come to steal them, harm them, anything. And they're even doing it through the court systems and the law. So we have to take and basically educate ourselves to defend against this. Otherwise, you're going to lose your kids. And then they're going to take everything you've ever worked for. They're trying to keep you poor and tie you up and keep you under control and thumb to where you do not succeed or ever take and have a chance at the American dream of what it was to be successful at anything, because they're going to drag you through and they're going to use your kids and your family to do every bit of it. And they don't care. Nope. They have no care whatsoever. Next case, matter of fact, they get bonuses off some of that stuff too.
Oh, they do. The schools are actually making money, and they're offsetting their transportation costs by getting kickback from the federal government and CPS for instructing their they're mandated reporters from CPS, or from your school teachers, your nurses and stuff like that. They're all mandated reporters, right? So when they see, oh, little Timmy came to school with a little scrape on his knee, oh, we're instructed to call CPS immediately.
Because
even
they
though
work
little
for the
Timmy might have went
state or local. That's why
Right.
they're able to do it.
Right. So they're offsetting their transportation costs simply by trafficking children. Right. So you guys, we're going on an hour and a half of this podcast. You guys, we got to get out of here. But this is
Hey,
basically
Dallas,
what we're talking about.
Do you want me to cover going through some of the case law, kind of explaining that briefly of how to read through that so people better understand those? Okay. Guys, when you go through this, the beginning will have who you're against, who you're back, the jurisdiction, everything else. It'll explain everything. And then the judge will issue the orders. Now, if you look at some of the federal case laws, they'll issue the orders first, and then you'll have what's called the summation. The summation is the judge's train of thought, or what thought process he used to make the decision based off of the laws and the evidence that was presented. That train of thought then becomes policies and procedures for the lower courts and the lower entities to take and follow. They must track that same train of thought when they're doing that process under that particular case law of what they're doing. So if they're coming in for your kids and doing a certain way, you have to follow certain case law and certain things under the summation. That becomes their policies and procedures. That's what was taken away during the Chevron, was now you get to interpret for yourself without the ruling judge. You have to follow everything he's saying, because then there's no room for interpretation, if you will. It is defined. So if you guys go through that, a lot of this that we're talking about is usually found in the summations. Don't get caught up into it. That's more plainly worded in your summations of how things, how they came to it. And it will help you understand their train of thought so you can line up with theirs of going, okay, that makes sense because of how they put it together. The other stuff can be a little confusing, but that's basically just the breakdown, just a quick version for you guys. Maybe one time we'll do something or with a few others, maybe with Paul, get there on a little bit more description of how to read those a little bit better. Maybe we get him as a special guest one time. So yes, we are represented too legally. You want to go ahead with that one, Dallas? Dallas knows who we got for our federal attorney.
We'll talk about that in another podcast. We got to nail down some facts and stuff like that before we start announcing that.
Roger,
you guys, yeah. So you guys, when you're looking at your policies and procedures, you've got to start looking at the investigations. You got to start looking at the policies for consent, interviewing, initial investigations, the onset of the issue. You got to start looking at intake. Every single state has their policies and procedures either online or on a PDF format. Learn it. Because that is where you're going to realize this is how you beat CPS. They will not follow due process. They will not follow federal statutes or constitutional law. But they will not do it. Your court-appointed attorneys aren't going to do diddly squat because they work for the state and the court. They don't have an interest in making sure that you win your case. You do. Make sure you have a voice. Learn the law, learn your rights, learn a little bit about court procedure, and watch how fast your case turns around. Mm-hmm. Gunnar, Rose, thank you for being here. Do you guys have any last words?
Good luck.
Just stay prepared, be vigilant, don't give up. And if anything, don't be afraid to ask for help for people, but make sure you're willing to put in the work, because they did not make this easy, and you are always your best advocate in any situation.
Absolutely.
I agree 100%. I concur. Gunnar, Rose, thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing the information and your knowledge and your expertise. We'll probably have you on the podcast show once again. We're probably going to be covering a lot of this because this is a massive issue. This needs to be nationwide. This information needs to be spread nationwide, and it's an epidemic of every single state. Okay, the treason And the violations of civil law and constitutional law are happening in every single state.
And by standing up for it and doing what we're trying to do, this could actually change the face of our very country.
God willing.
We're hoping for the best, but it takes us, we the people, to do it together. That's the point.
All right, Gunner. Thank you, guys. Rose, thank you. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time. You guys, thank you for being here. If you have any questions, you are more than welcome to hit me up and email me. My email is on the screen. It is truthhurtsconsulting@gmail.com. If you would like to set up a consultation, go ahead and set up a consultation, and that would be, I think it's right there. Yeah, it's on the screen now. It's right there on Stan Store at Malibu, Dallas. If you're not following them yet, go follow Gunner. His TikTok is scrolling across the screen. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and make sure you hit that little bell notification to get any kind of updates on any videos. For everybody watching here, I appreciate you guys coming in live and seeing the video in person. For everybody who's watching this outside of the live video, take all this information and spread it throughout your state. This information does not need to be kept secret. We are going to be implementing some stronger investigations. We have possible FBI investigations even looking at what we are talking about. This is not something to take lightly. So we talked about a lot, guys, and I hope you guys took some notes. I hope you guys saved this video, and if you need anything, make sure you subscribe to my TikTok channel, email me, and I would be happy to help you as much as I possibly can. Again, I am not a lawyer. I cannot give you legal advice or represent you in court, but everything that we try to help you out with is educational purposes only. So other than that, have a good day. That was a good show, Gunner.
Tried the best I could.
I think my video was lagging, though. Did my video look like it was lagging?
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't know if it was you or
going on. I have another camera, really nice camera that I set up. I don't have to use the camera on my video or my computer, but I could not get it to connect to my fucking computer. And so it just pisses me off, and because that's a really nice camera, and it just.
Well, the pixelation in your graphics card has a lot to do with that. So if you've got a high pixelation on your camera and your graphics card isn't supporting it well, it actually will slow it down and do stuff like that.
Well, I got an Apple Mac. My graphics card is perfectly fine.
Right.
And so there's no reason why that shouldn't be compatible. And it was working on the last few of my other podcasts. It was working perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden I can't even get it to connect. So
you may have to unload it and reinstall it all over again.
Yeah, I tried that. I'm gonna have to do it again. I got to figure something out because.
Do you ever defrag or anything like that?
On a Mac?
Files? Huh?
You can do that on a Mac?
Yeah. Under your organization and free up space. They have new terms for it. It's not what it used to be. It'll say free up space or optimize your unit.
Yeah. I knew how to do that on an HP. I don't know how to do it on a Mac. I'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, it's little stuff like that. Yeah, there's just so many states, man. I mean, I can only take some. I usually have to stop because I'm so disgusted at what I'm reading of, oh my God, can you imagine exploiting all the loopholes in this state and being able to do it and the way they do it and stuff like that? It's just disgusting. Like I said, they can get your kids in there and even turn around and go in one state. The court may be done with you, but we're not. We will complete our own event. Like, they're above the courts. I was like, holy crap. I'm like.
Some of them even have policies for interstate